This episode of Ted's Fishroom is about aquarium racks. I will describe the different types of racks that I use and how to build a basic wooden stand. Wooden stands offer the most flexibility in design, are strong enough if they are built correctly, and are the most cost effective. Commercial shelving units are fast and adjustable, plus they are very portable and can be stored when not in use, but they rarely fit larger tanks exactly and are more expensive than building a comparable wooden stand. For large aquariums, I prefer to use metal aquarium stands. They are easy to move when remodeling a room and take up less space than a wooden stand built to fit the same aquariums. Best designed stands utilize a dado joint so that the board the tank rests on, the rail, is set directly on the legs that support the weight. This stand does not use a dado joint, and all the weight of the aquariums is being held up by these bolts. This is not the optimum way to build an aquarium stand. I am going to demonstrate how to build a basic wooden stand for two 24-inch long aquariums. Start by cutting all the wood pieces you will need for the entire rack. When you design your stand, make sure that the dimensions will fit the aquarium you want to use in between the legs and solidly on the center of the rail. You will need 4 identical legs, 4 rails, and 4 spacers to hold the two sides of the rack together. In this video, I am actually making 2 stands, so the amount of wood you will see is double what you will be using for one stand. To cut the dado joint gaps, line up all the legs and clamp them together. Make sure that the edges of the boards are flush. The ends of the 2x4 rails need to rest snugly into the dado gaps, so measure the size of these cuts carefully. Too small a gap is fixable, but too large a dado will result in a ruined rack. I use a circular saw to cut the dado. The depth of the blade should be set to the thickness of a 2x4. You are going to make several passes between the dado marks with the saw. Try to make the cuts less than 1/2 inch apart. Check the clamp occasionally and make sure the legs are still in the right position. It is easier to make all the dado cuts at one time while the legs are clamped together. Once the dado cuts are complete, a chisel can be used to pry out the wood from the dado joint gaps. Use a wood rasp to smooth out the surfaces inside the dado gaps. Use a piece of 2x4 to check the size of the dado gap. The fit should be snug. Once the dado cuts are complete, the legs can be unclamped and the assembly of the rack can begin. Start by seating the rails into the dado gaps and drilling some pilot holes for the screws you will use to fasten them together. The screws will not be holding the weight of the tanks, so a 2.5-inch screw is all you need. The spacers will be attached to the rails just inside the legs. The length of the spacers should be sized so that the width of the rack places the front and back edges of the tank in the center of the rails. This completed stand is now ready for use. Larger scale stands can be built using the same principle of rails and dado cut legs. Tall, narrow stands like these benefit from some lateral support. In this case, the stands are positioned perpendicular to each other, so a couple 90-degree braces between them is all that is needed to stabilize them both. A piece of foam insulation placed under the tanks corrects minor issues with uneven surfaces and insulates the tank from the heat from light fixtures below them. Stair-step racks need to have access space in the back to fit electrical cords, air lines, and hoses. If the rack is vertical, be sure to have enough space above the lower tanks to be able to fit lights and maneuver nets and hoses. And it is really important to always place your racks in such a way that you can get behind them. Rails with multiple tanks that are over 48 inches long need to be supported in the center to keep them from bowing. With a good layout plan, it is easy to build all the racks you will need to make your fish room exactly what you want it to be.